The Naked DJs podcast. Are they really naked? We know they expose themselves every day just so they can bring you the best of music. They like to stick it out there for everyone to hear. You can hear their podcast on Anchor.fm, YouTube, and any of your favorite podcast platforms. Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. And today we're going to be talking all things communication, as I have the founder of the YouTube channel MasterTalk on. He provides free communication tools to the world, and he also teaches executives and entrepreneurs how to be in the top 1% of their industry. So if you have any issues to communicate or speaking or anything like that, this is the man to go to. Brendon, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be on, Curtis. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Why don't you start off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely, man. For me, the story started when I was in university/college. I used to do these things called case competitions in business school. Think of it like professional sports, but for nerds. So while other guys my age were playing football or basketball and baseball, I definitely wasn't one of those types of guys. I did presentations competitively. And then as I got older, I started coaching students who were younger than me, mostly because we didn't really have a coach in that program. And that's how I learned how to coach people how to communicate. But when I started working in the corporate world, I had the idea for MasterTalk, Curtis, because I realized that all of the information I had in my head wasn't available for free on the internet on communication and public speaking. You hear a lot of advice like, oh, you should be yourself and follow your dreams. And I was like, oh, this is not really good advice. So I started making videos in my basement. And then a few years later, MasterTalk turned into something I never could have imagined.
You know, what has got your passion for speaking? Because I know that you seem to have a real passion for helping people and showing them how to communicate. So what really got you rolling on that?
Yeah, for sure, brother. So essentially where the passion came from, it was mostly out of necessity back then, because case competition, these presentations for nerds thing that I used to do, led to a lot of corporate jobs. And I really wanted one of those jobs because it was my way out of poverty. A lot of my parents raised me on minimum wage salaries. So it was my way out in recreating life for everyone in my generation. So I started doing these competitions mostly out of necessity, but it turned into this obsession. I just started really loving case competition for some reason. I always like to call myself the Michael Jordan that nobody gives a shit about, in the sense that Michael Jordan was really, really good at basketball and people see him a lot and they see the sport, and he was super intense with his teammates. So I was in the same way in case competition, except no one really cares about presentations that much. So yeah, brother, I started developing a passion for that. And when I realized how gifted I was in coaching other people on how to speak, my life kind of hit a crossroads. I was either going to keep pushing and use communication as a lever to do something else. A lot of great communicators aren't coaches. They're usually executives, they're CEOs, they're politicians, they're podcast hosts, right? They don't really coach people on how to speak. And the second road that I thought of was what if I became this coach and I unlocked everyone's ability to communicate, and how quickly that would advance the human race and really change the world in a meaningful way. So I went with route number 2, and I went all in on speaking coaching.
Well, why don't you give people some tips on how to be a world-class communicator like yourself?
Yeah, for sure, Curtis. Appreciate you, brother. So a couple of tips I'm happy to share. So let's go with 3 in particular. I would say the first one is a question I'd love for your audience to think about. And the question is, how would your life change if you were an exceptional communicator? This is a question people probably haven't really thought about. We dream about our vacations, the expensive things we want to buy, the cool things we want to get, but very few of us dream about a world in which our communication skills are better and how that world would be impacted. Because at the end of the day, Curtis, communication is so much more than giving a presentation. It's so much more than going up on a stage. It's every conversation that we have with every human being that we meet in our lives. And that's really what communication is all about. It's every interaction that we have with the people that we love or the people we get to love and get to meet in our lives. So I would encourage your audience to start reflecting on that question. Don't just write it down on a piece of paper. Really block out 10 to 15 minutes and reflect on it. How would my life be different? What if I did get better at communicating? How would this benefit me? Would it be a promotion at work? Would it be traveling? And reflecting on that question really helps people dream and create that motivation to actually be great communicators. That's number one. Number two is the random word exercise. The random word exercise, essentially, in a nutshell, Curtis, is you take a random word like phone, like screen, like post-it notes, and you create presentations out of thin air. And you would do this 5 times a day for 5 minutes a day. And what I always tell people is that if you can make sense out of nonsense, you can make sense out of anything, right? And the random word exercise is just a way for us to do that. Where if we can make sense out of absolutely something that has nothing to do with anything, like avocados or like toast, and we're able to create presentations, well, then when it comes to communication and public speaking in the corporate world or our day-to-day jobs, life becomes a lot easier. So spend 5 minutes every single day just doing that exercise. And then the third drill that I'm happy to share is called the question drill. Have we ever been in a situation at work or at school in our lives where somebody asks a question, we don't really know the answer to that question? So what I recommend people do is proactively guess those questions. What if you thought of 100 questions that somebody could potentially ask you about your product, your service, a job that you have at work, maybe a family member might ask you something about, did you take out the trash? Did you do this? And how you answer those questions. So spend 5 minutes every day thinking about one question that you think you'll get asked in your life and spend those 5 minutes reflecting on an answer. If you do that once a day, Curtis, you'll have answered 365 questions over the course of a year with only 5 minutes a day of your time.
Absolutely. So with COVID and everything, or a lot of things becoming virtual, a lot of people are doing virtual presentations. So give us some tips on how we can master those virtual presentations.
Yes, sir. Of course. Happy to, Curtis. So let's go through the differences between online and offline. So online and offline, the biggest difference is eye contact. So let's say we're all in a room together. There's 5, 10 different people, Curtis. In that situation, what happens is our eye contact in person deviates based on who we're speaking to. So we have to keep turning our head and look at people individually in the eye. But in the online world, what's interesting is that when you're giving a presentation over Zoom and people see you on camera and all that stuff, you need to keep your eye in one place. And that one place is the camera lens. And whether you're staring at one person or 10,000 people, what happens is it feels like you're staring at all of them at the same time. So you don't have to actually move your head. That's the big difference between online and offline. The second difference, and there's three, the second one is energy. So when it comes to energy, I mean, let's face it, it's a lot easier for us to draw our energy when we're next to somebody, when we're around somebody, when we're in a situation where we see that person in real life. It's a lot easier to draw the energy. Of course, in a virtual setting, it's a lot more challenging. So the key is really to practice offline. Take all of the energy that you're practicing externally and bring it back internally. Bring it back into your virtual presentations. And that's difference number two. Difference number three is an accessibility to your audience members. So in an in-person presentation, it's really easy to get feedback from the people around you. Super, super easy. And the way that you do this is very simple. All you do is you get that feedback by asking them for lunch. Hey, I'd love to pick your brain, get some lunch with you after the presentation is over. It's very easy to do. You get their feedback and you could keep spinning and rolling with the punches. But there's a big but. In virtual, accessibility is much harder because there's a lot more friction. Because you're all in a Zoom call, you can't really get lunch with them right after. So you need to force that interaction. You need to get on calls with them, have more Zoom call discussions with them so you can get the feedback that you need to make your presentations better.
Well, I know in your bio, you talk about how you help executives and entrepreneurs become the top 1% communicators in their industry. How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, for sure, brother. So there's three pieces to being a top 1% communicator in our industry. So let me start by defining them. Let's get into the 3 points. The way that I define that is, let's say you're an accountant and you're a room with 99 other accountants. How do you make sure through the way that you communicate your message, the way that you stand out, that you walk away the number one communicator in that group of 100 accountants? That's really the outcome that we're looking for. And that person in that room, whether you're a technologist, whether you're a baker, doesn't really, or a dentist, what does that person have that everyone else in your industry doesn't have? So there's three pieces to that, Curtis. The first piece is motivation. And when I think of motivation, I think of having a clear, burning desire as to why we want to master communication in the first place. So I'll give you an example here. If someone has a clear reason why they want to master communication, they're going to do the random word exercise a lot more. They're going to do the question drills a lot more until they get the results that they're looking for. And that's the first major difference that we see. The second difference is direction. So when we think of direction, we think of communication goals. A lot of us have goals with our health. We have goals with our relationships. We have goals with our business. But how many of us have goals with our communication skills? And that's where the challenge lies. Start drafting some communication goals for yourself. Be very specific. What do you want to actually achieve? In the top 1%, do that exceptionally well. And the third piece to that, my friend, is technique. So going back to a lot of the strategies that we learned today, what the top 1% of communicators do is they don't just learn the techniques, they apply them consistently and frequently. A lot of the people that I know in that top 1% have done the random word exercise 100, 200, 300 times. They've done the question drills 100, 200, 300 times. Not a day, don't get scared, but they've done it a few times a day so that it adds up to a few hundred over time. And that's really how you get into that top 1% category.
Well, tell us all about your YouTube, your MasterTalk channel. Tell us what made you decide to start it, and tell everybody what they can expect when they tune in and check you out and subscribe to you.
Yeah, absolutely, Curtis. Happy to, brother. The reason I started MasterTalk is because I wanted to be an encyclopedia for any communication question in existence. I always think about Elon Musk when he was 15 years old. When he was 15 and nobody supported him, nobody knew who he was, nobody cared about him. No one was helping him with his communication skills. And I always think about the next Elon Musk, the next person. And we don't know who that person is. It might be a 14-year-old girl in Dubai. It might be a 13-year-old boy in East Africa. No one really knows. But by creating a MasterTalk, the YouTube channel, my hope is that I can share these ideas, these videos, these tips with the world so that even if somebody can't afford a communication coach, like me as an example, they can still go to MasterTalk and listen to a lot of these videos and get so much out of it and be able to apply a lot of the lessons. Like everything we shared today, Curtis, we don't need to rocket science, right? It's like, okay, random word exercise, pick a few random words, book 15 minutes in my calendar tomorrow, spend some time doing the question drills. It's not hard. It's just we need people to get excited about communication, to see why it's important to them, and to practice it more consistently. And MasterTalk, the YouTube channel specifically, will give people access to any possible question they could have on communication. Hopefully, that's the hope.
Well, talk about your free Zoom course and any current or upcoming projects that you're working on that people need to know about.
Yeah, of course, Curtis. Happy to do that, brother. So we do a free training over Zoom every few weeks. And the goal here is really to make coaching more accessible for people. So for those of you who are interested in this, all you have to do is go to rockstarcommunicator.com. And if you go to that website, you'll have access to register for one of our free trainings. It's not a webinar. It's not a recorded session. You jump on it. It's live. It's interactive. It's fun. I'm coaching people on the call for free, and it's super fun. So feel free to join us, and you're always welcome back to any of those sessions.
So besides rockstarcommunicator.com, give out any other links that people can connect to you with.
Yeah, for sure, Curtis. I would say those are the main two. So it would be rockstarcommunicator.com and also YouTube as well for MasterTalk. And then for my other socials, you're more than welcome to look up my name on LinkedIn, though it's really hard to spell. So I would encourage you all to check out the YouTube channel, and you'll see my socials over there, and you could link up with me on LinkedIn as well.
Go ahead and close us out with any final thoughts that you might have for the listeners out there.
Yeah, for sure, Curtis. Thanks for having me on, man. Always a blessing. So I would say for me, my final piece of advice is a book and a saying. So the book is Thirst by Scott Harrison. It's the only communication book that I recommend people check out. I think Scott is very proficient in the application side of how to communicate ideas effectively with others. It's really, really powerful. I really like the way that he shows up. I really like the ways that he shares incredible ideas and insights. And the way that he storytells and uses public speaking for practical impact is really mind-blowing. So I encourage all of you to check out Thirst by Scott Harrison, the book. It's an absolutely fantastic read. And my final piece of advice I'll leave the crowd with, it goes back to that final question. How would the world change if you became an exceptional communicator? How would your life change if you became an exceptional communicator? Really reflect on that question, because if you do, it might just change your life and create that burning desire inside of you to share your message and to share your voice with the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, check out and subscribe to that MasterTalk YouTube channel. Also go to rockstarcommunicator.com. Sign up for that free course. I mean, you can't beat free. And also be sure to follow, rate, review, and subscribe to this show and share this to as many people as possible. Android listeners, go to the Google Play Store and download the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast app. Brendon, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your expertise.
Pleasure was absolutely mine, Curtis. Thanks for having me on.
For more information on the Living the Dream podcast, visit www.djcurveball.com. Until next time, stay focused on living the dream.